As we get into talking about evolution, one of the things you always hear about is the Galapagos Islands and Darwin, Charles Darwin. I was fortunate enough when I turned 50, my gift to myself was to go down to the Galapagos Islands, down to Ecuador, and Galapagos Islands are part of Ecuador. Uh, just to experience it, because when you learn biology, you learn about evolution and you hear about Darwin. So I'm just going to take you on a quick little trip down there, give you some idea of some of the things that Darwin looked at and some of the other things that have been learned since then dealing with the Galapagos. First of all, location. This is South America. Right here you see Ecuador, and then located right along here is the equator. Right here is the archipelago called the Galapagos Islands. So it is part of Ecuador. So here's a close-up of Ecuador. We flew into Quito. We flew into Quito. We spent a few days there. I'll show you some pictures from that. And then we flew down to Cake Hill right here, and then flew out to the Galapagos Islands from there, where we took a cruise, which I'll talked about. These are just some pictures from Quito. A very, very populated city, spread out, just farther than I've ever seen a city spread out in the valley between mountains. This was actually every week the president comes out, and so they have all these. The president of Ecuador comes out and does a little spiel, and so we got to see that. As we walked along, we took a walking tour of Quito, and this is one of the delicacies for them. And I don't know if you can tell what they are, but the women that were selling these they were like, Guinea, Guinea, Guinea. And it turns out that they are guinea pigs, which for us would be kind of icky to eat, but it was a delicacy for them. So I paid them $1 to let me take their picture, and I thought they were going to the women were going to let me take their pictures with the guinea pigs, and then it turned out they didn't. I just could take a picture of the guinea pigs. Quito by night, we thought we were going to a Ecuadorian restaurant, but we were actually going to a Greek Ecuadorian restaurant, so we pretty much had Greek food, but it had an amazing view from the balcony there that we were sitting, so that was very nice. What we did before we flew out to the Galapagos, I'm a big bird geeky person, and so I wanted to go see, and so did my friend that I traveled with, we wanted to go see a cloud forest in the area. They have the highest bird species density in the world in this area, just hundreds and hundreds of different birds. So this is here. When I knew I was traveling, I also traveled to Peru that year, that I was going to be in high bird density area. So I was going to try to get 365 birds on my list for that year, and I knew I needed to get to 300 by the time I left Ecuador. So here's the cloud forest. It's called the cloud forest because clouds come through very easily. Think of fog, very, very moist, and the clouds can just roll in pretty much at any time, and you can't see anything, and then boom, they can roll out, and you can see through the rainforest. So here you have a morning shot of the clouds coming in. So saw a bunch of birds, and I'm going to be honest with you, it's been a few years. This is a cinnamon flycatcher. This is a masked trogon, and this is the female, and this is the male. They actually hung out around the area that we stayed because they had lights, and the lights would attract bugs, and they would like to eat the bugs. This is a sparrow, a rust collar, or I think it's a rust-collared sparrow. We actually have things that look kind of like this, but not just like that. And this is called a toucan barbonet. Pretty cool. It's just so neat to see birds that look so different from the ones that we have. This one, I'm blanking on the names of both of these, but this one is just unbelievable. I truly asked somebody, and another American, I asked him how they got a Muppet, because he just looked like a Muppet up there. And this guy was sitting up there. He's at night. He's nocturnal, and he would come up there at night. So I had a guy put his flashlight on it so I could take a picture of him. This is a toucan, a version of a toucan bird. So pretty neat. Just like I said, the diversity of birds was just amazing. This is called, best name, cock on a rock. This is the female cock on a rock. She was actually number 300 for the year. They're called that because they nest on these rocks. And so she was actually off her nest. We saw her on the nest, but she was off the net at this point. She wasn't real happy with us. We apparently were too close, so we moved away. They're known for their hummingbirds. We have one species of hummingbirds in Indiana. They have at least 11, I think like 15, 20, and they would just come in. And like I said, I'm a photography buff, so I literally took 800 pictures of hummingbirds. It was just amazing to see them, just how pretty they are. And they put feeders up so they come in pretty close. This is a bumblebee. I think that's what they call a bumblebee hummingbird. It's the second smallest behind one that's in Cuba. So they're cute and they're very loud, but they get pissed off at each other. They can start to fight. So pretty neat. You go up and down the mountain, and there's different species at different elevations. So then we flew out to the Galapagos Islands just to show you a map here. Some of these are easier to get to, some you can't get to. We actually landed. We landed here in Santa Cruz. There is one. There's an airport with one runway, and the plane goes in, turns around, drops people off, takes off, another one comes in. It was actually built by the United States during the Second World War, kind of as a protection to make sure we didn't get attacked from the south. Our cruise is going to go around here. We landed here, come in here, go around here. We went all the way up to here, came back around, went around over here, came here to Isabella, and then we ended up in Santa Cruz again. And then my friend and I wanted to see a few other things, so we took a fast boat over to San Cristobal, and we spent a couple days there. And I'll show you what we did there real quickly. All right, so Darwin, when he traveled on the Beagle, and you'll read about this in your book, they won't tell you this, but he traveled with a camera. Cameras back then were pretty big, probably 10 times bigger than the one I carried. But he didn't take any pictures in the Galapagos because it was just too difficult to get it out. So unfortunately, it would have been really cool to see the pictures that he would have taken, but he didn't. They are known for their endemic species, what that means is their habitat is restricted to a very particular area. Because the Galapagos Islands are islands pretty far away from anything else, species have developed there that only exist there. And they are endemic in the sense that they are also somewhat endangered, and so we're always trying to protect them. What was interesting was that while we were in the Galapagos, after we left the mainland of Ecuador, the Pope actually came for a visit, and one of the reasons he picked Ecuador on his trip was to try to promote nature and promote preserving nature, because the Galapagos Islands are being threatened. They control a lot of things. They only let so many people on the islands. They only let so many people in the boats. Only, and you have to have a very strict schedule. The boats have to be a certain way in order to try not to pollute the area. But it's slowly being lost. In an attempt to try to make more money, some people in Ecuador are starting to abuse the Galapagos, and it might not be as controlled in the future. So first day in the Galapagos, we saw a flamingo, we saw a heron. All right, we have herons here. Flamingos are actually not native. They actually came from the United States. There's what's called a Sally Lightfoot crab. Now I want you to look, when we talk about evolution, look at the color of this crab. I mean, if you were this color crab in the wrong spot, what's going to happen to you? You're going to get eaten because, man, you're bright. Okay, so you're sitting out there going, come on, I'm here, I'm food. But they have no predator in the Galapagos, and that's why they can evolve this way. This is actually a Sally Lightfoot crab eating the particles out of the mouth of a dead fish. So that was kind of cool to see. So again, because they don't have a predator, they evolve these colors. The colors are beneficial from a mating standpoint, okay? From a mating standpoint. The brighter you are, the males especially, the females will want you. A couple more islands we went to. The Galapagos is volcanic, and so the different islands are farther along depending on where or when they were produced because of volcanic activity. So the first islands we went on were very, very hot and very volcanic. And then the first things that will start to form is these cacti will start to form, and then the land will progress as the island becomes more mature and older. There are what are called lava lizards. There are 7 different species throughout the different islands. Each species has a different push-up mating routine. And what happens is the male will do so many push-ups in a certain way, and then that attracts the female. So he does his little push-up thing, ooh, I'm impressed. So try to impress the female, and then the female will get in the ready position, which I'll show you in a second, and then the male will mount her. And each species does a different push-up mating routine. So each island, different species, does a different routine. So here you see this is called pumice. This is actually lava. Okay, so here's what happens. He does his little push-up thing, and if she's okay, I'll show you what she does, and then he gets on top of her, and they make little lizards. Okay. So what happened at one time, animals here, what's so amazing about the Galapagos is the animals here, they don't fear humans. So you can get 6 feet or 5 feet from a bird and it's not going to fly. They're just not scared of humans because they've never been abused by humans. So what happened is the male had done his little thing. This is the position the female gets into when she's like, "Ooh, I like your push-ups," and is ready to be mounted. But what happened was, as we came around the corner, and we didn't know they were there, as we came around the corner, the male ran. So the female was kind of stuck like this. So I call this lava lizard porn. So she was like, "What the heck?" He never came. He may have came back after we left, but he didn't come back while we were there. We went to the top of the island just to get a view. Um, so there was our boat. Our boat was one of the smaller ones. So when I say we're on a cruise, it was a 16-person cruise. It was a small boat. It wasn't what you think of as, a big cruise ship. It wasn't like that at all. So again, you see some of the volcanic kind of looks to it. This is the picture that every tourist takes, so I had to take it too. This is in the morning. Again, you can see the volcanic kind of structures. This was sunset. And then we went out, and this was a long trip out. We did it overnight out to Genovesa. Um, it was one of those nights where it was, if you get motion sickness, you had to have something to help you. We pretty much didn't sleep all night because the boat was just up and down and up and down and up and down. So, but it was worth it. This is not my picture, but this is actually this is a collapse. This is part of the island is collapsing, and so the boat actually comes in here. This is Genovese Island. There are birds everywhere. That's one of the reasons I think it was the best island ever. These are the people that were on the cruise with us. And so we did a long hike. This is my friend that I traveled with. These birds are, they are eaten by an owl species that lives there. She was looking for one of the owls, but we could not find one. And then we saw our first boobies, and the Galapagos are known for their boobies. We saw what are called Nazca and red-footed boobies. So this is Nazca boobies. They nest on the ground. Again, they don't fear people. You're supposed to stay 6 feet away, and they are just oblivious to the fact that we were there. This one was not mad at me. It was mad at its mate. So here's you see they're little, and they're called boobies because their chest is so dominant. And here is a Nazca booby nest. Now this may look pathetic and like the chick's not going to make it, but this is actually what they look like. You'll notice their nest is pretty insignificant, but they just have to keep them safe. They have to keep them safe from the sun. So here's a little booby, a boobette. Later in life, they're pretty cute and pretty fluffy. This is their nest made by these rocks, and this is bird poop all the way around here. And what happens is they will turn away from the sun. So as they turn away from the sun, they poop out this way. And then if the sun moves, and they move over here and they poop out this way. And so by the end of the day, they've pretty much pooped all the way around. So you get like an outline, a poop outline of their nests. These are the red-footed boobies. Used to be known or still known somewhat as masked boobies. Here's a close-up of the face. This is probably the only picture of me on the trip. Right there is my reflection in their eyes. Again, you had to stay 6 feet away, but that's not very far. And again, the birds were pretty much oblivious to us. We saw frigate birds. 30-40% of their food comes from other birds, so they don't do a lot of hunting on their own. And this includes they steal food from the other frigate birds, not just other birds. Okay. That's a frigate bird. Here's one building his nest. The guide told us what they learned. This is a young frigate bird. They learn how to steal food and how to grab food from other animals. So she asked one of the guys on our cruise, she goes, put your hat up. Now, he wasn't supposed to let go. And the frigate bird kept coming down and tried to yank it, which is exactly what they would try to do with another bird. This picture here, this is the first day, and I didn't even realize what was happening. What would happen is this frigate bird would come and whack this one, and he would drop the fish, and this one would catch it before it would fall back into the ocean. And then this one would hit this one, and they'd go back and forth stealing the fish from each other until one finally just probably got tired and let the other one have it. Here's a frigate bird. This is probably a more common picture. This is their mating. They fill this up with air. They fly around and it fills with air. The bigger it is, the more attractive they are to females. And so they make little noises with their big old red frigate chin and chest, and that's what attracts females. All right, Darwin's finches. You've probably heard of Darwin's finches. he collected, well, he actually didn't collect finches. Most people think the finches are what gave him the idea of evolution. And in reality, he didn't collect any samples, so he didn't have anything to bring back with him to study later. He did note that there were differences in their beaks, and that was based on the food type they could eat. But here's a cactus finch. Here's a medium-billed finch. All right, here's a smaller one. And this guy was just pissed off finch, and it wasn't at me because I was far enough away. But what happens is, based on the food they have available, the ones that have the bills that will allow them to eat the food that's there will pass that on. So by chance, they have the right shaped bill that allows them to eat the food, which allows them to survive. If their bill's not the right shape, they can't eat the food, they die off, and that is not passed on to the next generation. What Darwin actually really used was mockingbirds, and we actually have those here. But they have 4 species of mockingbirds throughout the Galapagos Islands. We saw 3 of them, and he did collect samples of mockingbirds and take them back with him. And it's what he used to develop the idea of evolution. So here's mockingbirds. They can be kind of annoying by us, but notice the unique beak shape here. Okay. Now this is a small mockingbird. I'm just going to give you a simple example of how simple evolution can be. So let's just say that this berry is the only berry on this island that the birds can eat. And let's say this mockingbird was born and his mouth is too small and he can't eat the berry. Okay. So what's going to happen to that bird? Over time, he's going to starve to death. Where if a mockingbird just by chance is born with a bigger beak and a bigger mouth, they're going to be able to survive because they can eat the berry, and then over time they will reproduce, and then you have a population of mockingbirds with bigger beaks and bigger mouths who survived because they can eat that food. This guy was just young and not very smart, but he kept trying to swallow this and he couldn't. He'd spit it out. I actually sat and watched him for like 10 minutes and took a bunch of pictures. And so then he went on. Obviously, he's got other choices of foods. This wasn't a good choice for him. This is just the gull, type of gull you'll see in the Galapagos. We have these yellow-crowned night heron. This is one meditating on the rocks. They are famous for their sea lions. Their sea lions pretty much own the islands. You walk into a park and every bench that you look at will have sea lions on it. They put their fin up to help cool them off. This is one of the guys on the cruise, and so he tried the same technique. I took a GoPro with me, and I had never really snorkeled, and so we snorkeled, and it was amazing, and you can just see how clear the water is. And if there were sea lions around, they just wanted to play. And so I got tons of pictures of them. You can see some of the people on the cruise with us, and the sea lions were, like I said, just frolicked around with us. This guy, when you get a bull sea lion, they can be pretty vicious. He was on the stairs we needed to get up to go to the island. This is our guide from Germany. She actually had to scare him off to get him off the stairs. He was pretty violent, so she obviously has a little more training in getting them off there. This is a video of them swimming around. If you want to see it, it's out on my YouTube site. Now, one of the species that you're not going to see anywhere is what's called a flightless cormorant. We have cormorants in Indiana. There are cormorants, in a wide range of places around the world, but they can all fly. This one cannot. Now, normally, what would be the disadvantage of not being able to fly if you're a bird? One would be food, and 2 would be that predators could easily get you because you couldn't fly away. In this case, here's a mutation that occurred. Here's a mutation that occurred in a bird, and because there are no predators, and because they have access to food in the water, that mutation was passed on over time and it survived. Normally, if you were a cormorant, let's say in Washington State or Alaska, having wings and you can't fly, you would die relatively quickly because of either getting eaten by a predator or not having access to food, and so that trait would not be passed on. These are just some other birds. A Galapagos hawk. He let me get within 6 feet of him. Pretty amazing. There's a little finchy bird heading into the water. Marine iguanas is another species they are famous for. Godzilla was developed from the look of a marine iguana. Darwin and marine iguanas, the people on Darwin's ship, they were whalers. They weren't always very nice. One of them, well, I guess that one of the things they did was they took a big stick and they held by its tail a marine iguana underwater for over an hour. And they thought, oh, that thing's going to die. When they released him, the marine iguana just swam off. That wasn't very nice. They have salty sneezes because they spend so much time in the water. They have to have a way to get rid of that salt. And so when they sneeze, salt comes out. And I tried to get a picture of one sneezing, but it just didn't work. But here's what a marine iguana looks like. So you see where the Godzilla look came from. They can spend a long time underwater. They have very thick claws that allow them to hold on and eat the algae. Here, they're just being nice to each other. Here's one, again, a GoPro picture I took of one swimming away. Um, Again, they were pretty oblivious to us. Once I got too close just because the current kept leading me towards him as hard as I was trying to get away. I don't think I scared him, but I did get a little bit too close. And again, I have a video of them swimming if you want to go on YouTube and look at that. These are land iguanas. There's also what are called pink iguanas. They're very rare. Again, they're trying to preserve them. These were harder to see. It was difficult to find a place where they actually found them. They have penguins in the Galapagos Islands, the smallest penguin in the world, and the only ones found north of the equator. So there's a little Galapagos penguin. One of my goals in life is to see all the natural places where penguins are found. South Africa I've been to, Galapagos I've been to, so I have to get down to Antarctica and to the Falkland Islands and then over to New Zealand and Australia. So I've got 2 of the 5 done. Here are some. When I took this picture, I had no idea there was even an iguana. They just kind of fit right in there. Here's one swimming. Okay. The Galapagos tortoise is another famous example of evolution that's talked about a lot. What I want you to notice here is these are large tortoises. Some live 100, 150 years. Notice the difference in their shell. If they if they evolved on an island where the food was up high, the ones that had a shell like this were the ones that would survive because they could lift their head up and get to the food. If you were born like this tortoise on an island where the food was up high, you wouldn't survive. So by natural selection, the ones that could get to the food were the ones that would survive. This is a tortoise from another island. The food on this island is easily accessible without lifting their head or neck really high, and so they don't have to have the ability to go up high. So there are different types of tortoises in all different islands. They've all evolved slightly differently because of the food sources that have been available or that were available on the islands that they were evolving on. Okay. So now, most of the time you see a tortoise, it's usually in an area, in a reserve where they're trying to keep them safe. I will tell you, when the whalers came through the Galapagos in the time of Darwin, they would actually take the tortoises as a food source, but they didn't want to kill them, so they would put them in the boat and turn them upside down, and then they would eat them, kill them, and then eat them as they were going along. The whalers also brought goats to the islands, and that is one of the reasons that many of these have almost gone extinct. What the goats did is the goats would eat all the vegetation, and then what would happen is the vegetation was gone, and then the tortoises did not have access to anything, and some of them were, many of them died. Lonesome George is no longer with us, but he was the last of a specific species of a tortoise. They did everything to try to get him to reproduce, but he just didn't want to, so they weren't able to keep that species going. This is just kind of a combination here. They love these apples. Now they're poisonous apples, so people, we shouldn't have eaten them, but they love them. Now you can tell we're in a reserve here because you can see the number on his back. And so here he is going after the apple. Here he is going after the apple. And they'll fight over him. So this one comes in, and these are little guys. These guys are only like 2 or 3 years old. He'll come in and he wanted the apple, and then this guy's like, I want the apple. And then they stared at each other over the apple. And then this guy got pissed off and flipped the other one over so he could have the apple. And then he felt bad. If the tortoise stays like this too long, he'll fry up in the sun. So he must have known that and felt bad. So then he flipped him back over. and then they ran back to the apple, and then they stared at each other again. So it was pretty fun to watch. This is an adult. They can live up to, like I said, 100, 150 years old. Many times they're not sure how old they are. They only get fed. They only need to be fed twice a year. This is probably one of my favorite pictures of the whole trip. I was like, thank you for being in the water and thank you for there being a reflection. So that was kind of cool. All right, sea turtles, you can watch that video also. We ended our cruise, and like I told you, we went over to San Cristobal, and we saw more boobies. And these are probably the most famous of the boobies. These are the blue-footed boobies. And so the bluer their feet, the more they attract females. They do a little dance where they put one foot up, then they put the other foot up, and then they shake all about, and then hopefully the female likes that, and then they have little boobies. Like I said, boobettes. So boobies like to dive bomb for food. So I could take pictures of for hours of this. So they would just dive bomb into and come up with the fish. They actually catch the fish on the way up, not on the way down. This is all a lava tube. My friend Lonnie was very impressed and wanted to go back there. I had my camera and didn't want to slip, so she traveled through these natural lava tubes. We went out to Kicker Rock, and we actually swam with sea lions again, and we swam above sharks. There's hammerhead sharks, there's a Galapagos shark, several sharks. We were way up, they were way down. They've got plenty of food, so they're not going to bother. They're not going to bother the snorkelers. We also had people on our boat that went scuba diving with the sharks. These guys got really close. I actually at one point felt their whiskers against my face. These guys, he's kind of flipping me off. And there's some of them swimming if you want to watch those on YouTube also. So these are just some more pictures, some scenery pictures from the trip. This is worth watching. I consider the sea lions the cats of the ocean. You can watch that if you want to. And there's the end. All right, so I will have it available for you. If you want to do a summary of this, you can, and it will give you a possibility of extra credit. So if you want to watch it and do some of the summaries of the answer the questions that are on that sheet, it can give you up to 15 to 20 points extra credit.